Hello everyone. Thank you so much once again for joining us. So in today's session, we'll be learning about release strategy, or you can call it deployment strategy, right? So here we have some of them. Let's say we have a Canary deployment, then we have a rolling deployment and a blue-green deployments. So before that, we need to understand, maybe let me expand this one, if I can see. Okay, so let's go with the one by one. Okay. Um, So think, for example, we thought if you don't have this deployment concept here or strategy concept, what happens here? Normally, what we do, we try to deploy our applications into we don't directly deploy the application to the production environment, right? So we have a different stages. Let's say we have a development stage, or then we have a staging stage, then we have something called as the production or pre-production stage. Depends on the company to company or project to project, it may varies. But say, for example, we have a three different stages: development, then staging, then we have production. Say, for example, in our case, we have three staging. Now, normally, let's say production application is something that is already running. It is working fine. Everything is up and running. We should not have any single mistake also there, right? It should work as expected, right? But imagine now, you don't have this concept, deployment strategy or release strategy, whatever you can call. What happens here is if you try to deploy your higher environment without testing in your lower environment, what happens? Your application may not work as expected. There could be some issue or bugs or anything, right? So what will happen here? Then customer start complaining you, right? That your code is not working, application not working. Then you get a lot of feedback from the customer also. It will impact your business as well, right? This is the reason why we have to do we have to bring some concept where we can do different kind of there are different way of working when it comes to the release strategy or deployment strategy basically in DevOps. So one of them is known as Canary deployment. Now, what is Canary deployment? If you take a look at these basic definitions, Canary deployment is like trying out new software changes on a small group of users first to make sure everything works well before rolling it out to everyone. It's a way to catch and fix any issues early on. What it means basically, it is very simple to understand, right? That means if you want to deploy your application, say for example, we have developer has written the code, everything is working, everything's good here. I mean, it has done. Now what I'll do, this is, let's say you have a application here. It could be any application. Let's say the web, any e-commerce application, or it could be any application. Now here we have so many users, right? So it will have so many users. Now, so what happened now? Now, if imagine now, if we had to deploy or basically roll out in a sense, if you have to deploy this application to your particular in this environment, that is a production, let's say, or maybe pre-pro, whatever, let's say production. Before deploying to your this particular environment, that is your production environment, what they will do, they will first deploy the particular new piece of the code into certain user or group of user. For example, in our demo, we have this user. We will have only instead of how many three set of user or group. Let's say one group of user or maybe certain users, right? They will define here. So what happened now? Whenever there is any issue here, because if you deploy entire environment or maybe entire this thing, what happens? Traffic if you're sending here, that means people who are accessing this application also affect it will affect them also, right? So this is the reason why what they are doing is they will deploy the application into certain group of user or maybe set of users, so that only for set of user would affect. If there is any issue, it will affect only for that many people, not everybody, because for others and still they will be using the old version of the application. That means this is a new version of or maybe new set of applications only be specific set of users. Now whenever any issue within this particular user, they will give a feedback to certain this thing that this particular application is not used much. I mean, it is not working as expected. Please roll out, or maybe sorry, not roll out. Basically, revert back, or maybe do some changes according to whatever requirement. Then they'll make changes and push the changes. Again, they'll try here, right? So that others will not affect them. So once you test out everything, if everything's working fine, then only they will deploy entire production environment instead of set of users, right? So what happen? What is the advantage now? First advantage is whenever you have any issue here, they can easily identify the issue and fix the issue as early as possible. And once they fix the issue, they can, as I told you, deploy to the respective environment. That's as simple, right? So this is the benefit of using the Canary deployment, right? Next, we have a rolling deployment. Now, what is the rolling deployment? Now, deployment is a strategy where a new version of applications is gradually deployed to servers one at a time, ensuring continuous ability. Servers are updated sequentially, minimizing downtime and allowing users to access the application during the deployment. That means now you have see that this is a old core, this is a new core. They will deploy to where in let's say you have one server here, one particular server. Okay, as we all know, whenever we deploy the application, we would not just have one server, right? We may have a set of server, let's say 2 server, 3 server, 4 server also. So what they'll do here, they'll be deploying gradually to particular setup or my particular server itself. I'm saying particular server means one server, let's say. In one server, they will deploy instead of traffic to certain users. Directly what they will do, they will deploy the new code of the piece of the code, application code to this what is a set up one particular server it only at a time, and they will do a testing now. Let's say whatever issue or they can fix it here also. Now what is the advantage here? Because if you suppose having some issue also, you still have other server running, so which is running same applications, but then they'll be using an old version, right? The another other server would be using the old version, but the new core of the new core whatever you're deploying, the new basically to the particular server, only this will be used for the one server only, right? Only for one server. So this only will affect only for this particular server, not for this will be still running. You will have, let's say you have a 3 different server here, right? You have a 3 server. This will be running fine, this will be running without any issue because they are using old server. So but this particular we have, as I told you, we have only one server here, one server here. So wherever any issue or maybe based on the this thing, they can give a feedback. If all okay, then only they can also roll over to entire server basically instead of one server. Now but then first they will check in one particular specific server. If all okay, then they'll go ahead. If some issue, then they'll come and do it. Now question is, what is the advantage here? Now as I told you, there are two different they're having, let's say 4 servers here, 3 here, 1, right? Let's say here I have a piece of, as I told you, one server here, I have one server. Now if this is down also, still you have your whole application which is running as expected without any issue, because you're not touching other this thing server, you're only touching one specific server, but the same application will be running into the old server, I mean another 3 server, right? So you will have a downtime also. I mean, you don't have to worry about a downtime, that can avoid, right? Don't have to worry about the downtime because as I told you, the application will be same old application is running here, only the new application whatever having, as I told you, this you have to fix it according to the issue. Okay, so that they can avoid a bit of any minimizing their downtime and everything. Okay, so user can access even during the deployment also, because as I told you, only changing, you are doing only changing to particular VM only, right, or server. You're not doing entire the set of the group of server, right? This is the reason we have to use it. So let's say once you're good with these changes, let's say this is working fine, then the old code, old application version, they will this thing, they will be basically roll over all the new code. If it is working, they'll roll over to entire 4 server. 3 already existing for the old code, right? And here 1. That means all 4 will be accessing or maybe using the new applications. That is a new code basic, whatever the new version. Let's say version 1, this one. Version 1 we are having, right? All the 4 basically server, they'll be using the same new piece of code. and using by the customer or client. Okay, this is the beauty of using this thing. Now, when comes to the another one that is known as a blue green deployment. Now, blue green deployment is a strategy where two identical, carefully remember, it is clearly says it is a two identical environments, blue and green. That means blue is one environment, green is another environment. Coexist. The new version is deployed and tested in the non-production environment. That is a non-production in green. Okay, non-production in green. Not always we, that is how we do, right? Normally we, before moving to the production itself, we have to test it in a non-production or the lower environment. So in this case, it is known as a non-production, known as a green environment, right? Green. Then before seamlessly switching user traffic to it, minimizing downtime and providing a quick rollback option if issue arises. That means, now let's say you have a developer. This person has written in the code everything. As I told you, there are two environments. One is a green, second is a blue. Green is this is non-production, right? Non-productions. Where in this case, this is a production. Right? Blue means it's a production, let's say. Now what you'll do, your code is there, you will deploy here, right? So this basic live, this is live, that means this is a production, right? Live means it is production, it is used properly, it is already running your application version 1, or let's say this is a new one. I mean, this is a non-live, this is the old one, basic new code, this is old code. Old code means this one is a, let's say version 1, I have a B1, right? Let's say I have a B1. It is running fine here and everybody is using it here. Now we have another one that is a green. As I told you, green is nothing but it is a non-production. That means, let's say this is a other staging environment. Let's say now what we'll do, before they will basically test it here. As I told here, the new version means this is a new version, right? This is a version 1, this is a version 2, this is a latest. B2 it's a latest, basically LATESS. This is the latest version. Okay, this is the latest version. B2 is a version, B2 is nothing but it's the latest one. This is a old one. Now this is one working fine. This is a production running applications. Now in the green environment, that is your, as I told you, non-production one. What they will do is that, if you see here the definition, deploy and test it in the non-production, they will do all the testing, everything. Before, once it is tested properly, then only what they will do, they will switch. That means they have a two environment, like identical environment, as I mentioned right here. Identical environment, let's say production, let's say here, as I told you, is staging, let's say STG, staging environment, let's say, and it's the production, right? Product environment. Now what they will do, they will first test. Once they say they will test it here in the green environment, that is called as a staging. Let's say in our case, this is non-prod or non-production environment, right? Staging means. So they will do a testing, everything. Basically, there is something called like what do you call? Basically, we can route the traffic based on these thing, right? Slots. There is a deployment slot, something like that. We have it. Deployment slot concept. Now, as I told you, there is a green is nothing but non-prod or non-production, right? Non-production, let's say. Then another we have a blue. As I told you, in the blue mean it is a productions or running application production prod. Now what they will do, there is a slot to switch between production and non-productions. Sorry, non-production and production. First they will do a testing in the non-productions. If all okay, then they're good. If some issue is there, then they will switch back. I mean, basically revert back. If let's say this is working fine, mean then what they will do, they will basically can test it here, And once they are testing everything is success, they can switch back to the production also, like a blue green deployment. Let's say in the blue, let's say for any reason, let's say there's some issue, mean they can switch back to your another stage environment, that is a green environment, like that. So there is an option called the deployment slots. Even in Azure Web App also we have the concept, we have this concept. I don't know if you have noticed, but we have this one deployment slot in Azure Web App also. Yeah, Azure Web we have this concept. I mean, we have this option. Okay, that means now, as I told you, green first will be testing everything. If all working fine, before switching the traffic to your basically the productions, they will test it in the particular environment. Before switching the traffic, I mean traffic, they'll test it everything. Then they will, if all okay, then they will switch the traffic basically from the non-production to the production environment. That means that is in a blue environment, a blue green concept right here, right? Deployment. So that is how they can use it. That means now what is the advantage here now? That means you don't have to worry about your application. As long as your application working, let's say once you're having issue with the application, this person can fix it. After fixing, again, if you test it again, you can come and test it here. Once you do testing here, if all okay, then you can just switch the deployment. That means instead of switching to the green environment, you can now switch to the production environment because you have tested properly and you can work it. Let's say again, for any reason, let's say even small mistake, let's say issue occurs, you can, if at all required, in the production also some issue is there, directly in a fraction of second, you can directly change or switch the slot deployment slot here to the green environment again. And they can get it back or reward back to your existing, that is a v1 version that has that capability actually. Okay, that is the basically the difference between deployments, the different type of deployment strategy we have it. Okay, now in simple this thing, if you see canary definitions, can you accept somebody? Okay, now we have a canary deployment as we have already explained. So you can see the simple definition: deploy in a small part of the production's infrastructure. Only few users are routed until sign off. Okay, as I told you, when it comes to the canary, only set of users will be routed to the certain this thing and this thing. If all okay, then they can switch back. I mean, they can basically route the traffic later. Similar way for the rolling deployment, new version gradually replaced with the old coexist, right? And now blue-green deployment, two identical hardware environments, one active, one idle. As I told you, there is a two environment identical BM, right? BM1 and BM2. So production and the non-productions. So once you do testing in the non-productions, then if all okay, you can switch back to the production so that the non-production would be idle, because or you would be using only the I1 disk. That means you'll have a two environment. One is a active, second is a idle one. Idle when it will be having when there's nothing to do with. You'll do testing in the idle only first carefully. This mostly this idle will be used for where green. Okay, sorry, my bad. Green environment. Okay, that means non-productions. Non-product. Okay, that means if you want to use your production this thing environment also, you have identical BM similar configurations or maybe all together, and it will be first tested in this particular green environment. And once they do testing everything, then as I told you, if all okay, then they will switch the traffic to the particular blue environment, right? They will send the traffic to the blue environment. After once you've done the blue environment, what happens? This particular green, that is a non-product, it will be idle. Okay, then it will be idle. That is how it is. So whenever that means whenever there is a new release, you have to first do a testing here, then switch back to the blue environment, that is your productions. And then we have a concept called, this is another concept called what we call implementing release gates. So you might have already noticed last time, like when we created a release in when we deployed the Azure Web App, right, there is an option called gates, right, in DevOps Azure pipeline basically. Now release, when especially when you do a release, now what is gates and scenario of for gates? manual intervention for validation that we already know. So we can see this also. So first of all, implementing release gates. What are gates? We need to understand. In Azure DevOps, gates are automated checkpoints that evaluates predefined conditions, ensuring the quality and readiness of deployment before allowing them to proceed. They automate validation, integrate user feedback, and contribute to the reliability and safety of the deployment process. That means, as simple, right? If you see definitions, this is the key terms we need to understand here. Checkpoints. What is the work of the checkpoint now? Checkpoint is something, let's say, think about the in the real time. Whenever we travel one city to different city, there is something called a tool gate we have. What happened in the tool gate? In tool gate also same, just like this. What it does, they will check, right? They'll check vehicle number, they check everything, all the process, everything they will follow, right? You have to pay them certain things. Let's say same way we can also have in DevOps practice also something called as a gates, or you can think like a security, right? As part of let's say you want to go one country to different country, there is certain procedure that has to be met, right? But that has to be met based on the this thing, their policy or whatever terms, right? Similar way, even here also like that. That means you have a code, let's say you have a code here, you have written DevOps person, anybody can, it could be, let's say Terraform code you have. That means this is about Terraform related code or infra code. Now this particular code want to deploy to where? They want to deploy to Azure environment, right? In Azure they want to deploy. Here, in order to deploy, but now there is a person called as a gate in this case, right? Gate. What it will do here, in order to deploy, as I told you, this is a cloud, right? This is basically cloud environment, right? CLU, cloud environment. That means you are deploying in Azure cloud, right? So in order to do that, you need to meet certain criteria in order to deploy successfully into Azure. That is your Azure cloud basically, right? Now, what are the criteria here? Here, as I told you, gate is something, it is checkpoint. They will check it whether whatever according to the company standard or process, whether this particular resource can be created or not. They will first validate that one. If the validation or the condition is meeting their expectation according to the company standard, then only it is going to be created resources in your cloud, that is in Azure, right? So question is, what is the kind of this thing? What exactly we can do here? We will see this one. So first thing, what is the advantage basically or benefits of using this gates here? First thing, automated validations. So gates automate validations using tools and services, ensuring consistent and reliable deployment checks. So as we all know, right, whenever we want to validate something, we cannot validate everything manually. It has to be done through some tools or maybe some scripts, right? So this is the thing. Second, what is the advantage or maybe benefit? Risk mitigations. We all know every single company has their own standard, right? Whenever I want to deploy some resource, I cannot just create the resource and deploy in my production environment or could be any environment. There is a certain process or maybe some company standard where we need to follow. Same way, so that this also is also right. So risk mitigations. So this can basically reduce or minimize our risks also, because let's say for example, I want to create the virtual machines. If I want to expose the public IP address, or maybe we have an NSG, network security group. Normally there is a default, we have a network security group rule enabled, right, by default. That is a default one. But then if you want to enable some particular port, can you accept please? Okay. There is a certain port. If you want to enable it, so you should have the certain you should know, right, as per a company, which particular port to enable and which is not, right? So we should be aware of that one. So then only we have same way we can in this also we can do it. So as I told you, when it comes to the these concepts here, right? So yeah, now quality assurance. So this also will be ensure quality checks as well. That means according to the company standard, again the quality is good enough. Maybe according to the conditions that they define, they can also check if there is an issue. Of course, we can check that also. And also deployment safety also. Gears enhance deployment safety by preventing the release of changes with potential negative impacts. Now, as I told you, deployment is nothing but gears is just like a checkpoints, right? Now there are two types mostly we have it. One is a pre-deploy. We can define basically in two ways. One is a pre-deployment. Second, this is a right. This is a pre-deployment. Second is a post-deployment. Now question is, as I told you, this is a gate. Gate can be defined before and after. But what is mean by before and after, right? Pre-deployment and the post-deployment, right? Now think in this way. We all know that we would not just have one environment, we would have a multiple environment. So we are always clear that we have a dev environment, then we have a staging environment, then we have a production environment. That means in order to deploy your any resources into cloud or could be any other resource, first we will do a test in our and also check in our local, sorry, not local, in our lower environment. If that is all working fine as expected, then only the we will move to the next environment, right? Higher environment, right? The same way we are talking about here also. Now we have a code here, right? Pre means before basically deploying itself. Let's say example, I will give an example of the let's say this is known as a dev environment, and we have something called as this is a dev environment, let's say. Now in the dev environment, if I want to deploy, first what I'll do before deploying also, that means before deployment, before creating the resource, right? Before creating the resource, the pre deployment in the sense before creating the resource, I should be validated something. It has to done some validations. What kind of validation it has to be done? Such as you can say that say who's going to approve. Normally, as I told you, somebody need to approve your code, right? Before deploying to the dev environment, or could be somebody need to check the code quality also, or it could be this particular whatever code you have. Let's say you have Azure policy, right? We all know Azure policy also. Let's say in Azure policy, let's say I'm trying to say that in particular, let's say you have a code for the VM Terraform code. You have a VM for in VM. There is a particular let's say SQ. We know all the SQ, right? So we have a SQ. Something let's say T series. In the T series, we can use it. Let's say, but in the code, according to the policy, we should be using only T series SQ for VM. Second, we have a policy is that the VM only should be created within the BNet, specific BNet. That means, right? Specific BNet. That means there are two policy. One is it has to be T series VM. Second, the VM should be created within this particular BNet only. It could be any BNet. Let's say BNet 1, right? BNet B1, something like BNet 1. Now that means only when it is this particular code, Terraform code, whatever you have written, only when it is meeting this requirement, they will, as I told you, they will check here, right? Then and also there will be somebody who is going to approve this changes also according to the code. They will check your plan, everything. Then only they will approve it, right? So before creating itself, I can check it like this. This is one way. This is basically before creation of the resource. Then second, we call as a post deployment. Post deployment means when it is post deployment. As I told you, this is a dev environment. I have this is another higher environment. Let's say this is known as a staging, right? Okay, you have done this, meet all the requirements meeting fine. Now that means this particular is done. Now before creating to the moving to the another environment, and the another means let's say this is basically post forward. After post means after dev it will not directly deploy the resource to the staging. This will not deploy because there is a post. If you don't want to do, I'm saying, if you ignore this part, as I told you, there are two types we can define: pre and a post. Depends on the requirement, right? So if you're going with the post, that means before creation of the resource in this case. From your that is a dev stage or environment, right? Let's say I don't want to use this one. Let's say for now, let's forget about the this concept because I'm not going to use now. Let's say that means automatically the resource, whatever is the policy, it is also because there is no any conditions, right? So it will going to create in the particular environment. Let's say you can ignore for now this one. Okay. Now once you deploy the resource, so that means particular resource going to be deployed to where? It particular dev environment, right? Now in order to deploy same resources into the higher environment, what is happening here is, let's say I want to deploy to the staging, or could be, let's say, the production. It could be, you can think any example. Let's say in our case we'll talk about the staging environment. Now once you deploy here, before approving these changes, let's say staging itself, because this is the, let's say, higher environment, let's say this is the higher environment. Before creation of the resources, then same process, let's say, let's talk about this same concept now. Let's say the BM should have the SQ of T series, and also they have to use the bnet, that's a B1 or bnet 1. They have to use this bnet. Let's say when you create the Terraform code or write Terraform code, if you might have defined some other different code or maybe different bnet name or maybe SQ, in this case what happened here, automatically you will get a message that this is not meeting the uh, policy because there is a post condition, deployment conditions. After here, this is the next, right? So this will be post condition of your staging basically. But for the dev environment, it will be known as a post condition, right? Post deployment, because after the dev we have a post condition. That means for the next, before moving to the next stage basically, right? Or before moving to the next environment. Now they will check here if there is any issue, then you will get a message, fix the issue. Once again, this is deployed fine, but this person can raise a issue and they can tell this person to basically, they can raise the bugs also, tell this person again to modify SQ as well as a biner according to the company policy or standard, right? As per the project also. So then only once they are meeting the criteria of this particular expressions policy, then only this particular will evaluate everything once again. Then only if all meeting this expectation, they are going to create into your particular environment, that is in your staging environment. That is how it should be used. Okay. Now we have a manual interventions evaluation. We all know. So as I told you, they can have a manual predefined and post. You can have a, let's say, pre-deployment, right? This should be done always pre-deployment before doing, because pre-deployment, as we all know, that before deploying the resources, right? Before deploying the resources, somebody need to approve your what do you call your pipeline, right? That means now let's say I have a code here. I have a code here. I have written everything. Now there is a person to person here. As I told you, this is a gate, right? In the gate, as I told you, there are two types of gate: pre-deployment conditions or pre-deployment and a post-deployment, right? But when it comes to the manual uh, intervention, it should be always the post, sorry, pre-deployment. Okay. So in a, that means somebody need to do something. That means somebody need to approve it, right? So once they approve only according to the in the get level, then only the pipeline will start kicking. That means pipeline will start running it. Then when it comes to the validations also in the same thing also, somebody need to validate as well. Like intervention they will do, then they will validate. Validate means they will check whether according to the policy, again whatever the expectation, whether it is meeting or not, they will check it. If all okay, then only they'll proceed further. Otherwise the pipeline will fail automatically. Okay. Same way here also pipeline will fail if the condition not meeting it. We can do that also. Okay. Now we have a this one demo, means I will show you actually, because I don't have a full application now, but I will show you how to do that one. So if you remember last time we have done, let me show you. Yeah, here, right? Release. Let me go to release. Where is my release? Rounds pipeline. Okay, here, right? Let's say I'm here, this particular organization's here, this project, Azure project. Here I have a something called as a, what can I take? Example of release I'll take, because as I told you, pipeline is running. Let's say you have artifacts, everything in place. I want to deploy to my particular environment, right? So in order to deploy to the specific environment, after basically publishing using the CI would have already done, right? We have already done the CI. Now comes the CD, continuous deployment or continuous deployment or release. Yeah, continuous deployment, right? Here, or delivery, you can call it. Now we have so many. I will take one example. Let's say this is a new release. I will take one of the old one, which we have done already last time. I just wanted to show you. That's why. But don't worry, I will have a class next. I will do that also in the real time, end to end. Okay. Here, let's wait. Now, when it comes to the pipelines and the release, now you'll have an option to basically see the gates also where we can enable it. Okay, it's taking some time. Yeah. So we all know we have done this one, right? We have what we did was we create new one, we artifacts we publish, then we deploy. Let's say, as I told you, we have two different environment, staging in this case, a development, or maybe you can call it staging and the production, something like that. Okay, now what we need to understand here, we need to first edit it. This concept we already know, right? We have to attach the artifacts, then need to create the environment based on this thing, what stage you want to deploy. There is an option called the release, edit release. If you click there, let me click here. This is basically a task. You can see here. This is all the task is defined. Now, if you see here, as I told you, can you see here? This is for each environment, right? That means before moving to the next environment, if you notice carefully, just check here. This is a pre deployment condition. That means, as I told you, before deploying into your staging environment, please accept, no? Okay, before deploying to the, okay, before deploying this particular staging into the staging environment, this is, we can, if you want to do, we can use the pre-deployment approvals, right? So what happens if you enable it here? Now you can see. That means before creating your resource that is in your staging environment, then I can enable, let's say I want to give something, let's say any name, basically as long as you have the user in place, we can give access. This, let's say money would be approving it here, right? Once he approves this thing, then only they can move for the next this thing. Now we can mention here, what is the time hour? Time hour means 30 days. Instead of days, you can mention the hours also, or minutes also. Day mean, that means if you want 30 days, within that it will be time over, otherwise after 30 days. Otherwise, if you want within the minute, you can select within 30 minutes, or I can change here anything. Same way, if you want hours, within 30 hours, you can change it. Depends on your requirement. Second thing, here, approval policies. There is a certain policy for the approval as well. So as you can see here, the user requesting a release or the deployment should not approve it. What it mean? It is nothing but it says that if I'm the person who is actually basically creating or releasing it, let's say I'm creating a release using the release, so I should not be approving my own basically the deployment. That means I cannot approve my own deployment. Somebody has to approve on behalf, basically not on behalf of me, but somebody need to approve from apart from you. Okay, so that also if you want, you can enable it. If you don't enable, then by default you can enable it. By, I mean, you can approve by your own. then you can see the validated identity of approval before completing the approval. You can do this also if you want. Skip also if you want to do. Okay, there's an option. Skip approval if the same approver approved the previous stage. That means if you have a two different stages, the same person has already approved for the, let's say, dev environment. Now let's say I want to deploy or implement in my staging environment. By default, if it is already accepted or maybe approved in your previous stage, that is in your dev environment, by default in the staging environment also by default it will not, you don't need to do because it is already approved in the previous stage, so automatically it will skip the approval. That also we can enable it. So as long as you need this one, you can, otherwise you can ignore it. Okay, that option we have it. So in this case, I don't want to do. We have understood, right? This is a push deployment. Push deployment means within the same staging environment, we can have it. That means before moving to the next environment. Actually, this is not a dev environment. This should this thing. This should be a dev. This should be staging. Okay. Anyway, concept remains same. So now here also once I create after staging environment, I can also go a post deployment. Now in the post deployment also I can give as it is. Okay. Now we have understood same way. Is this also pre and post? Okay, we can do that one. Now you can check here suppose and you can enable. Okay, this is the thing. Now we have it one more. Let me check if I can. Now this is our Terraform variables. I think, yeah. Now if you can see here, if you want to define the variables here also, you want to pass, you can give variables. These variables basically you can see which environment you want to use it, right? So you can define it according to your requirement. So this also environment also one way where I can enable it. I mean, I can basically variable I can define it here also if you want. So this scope also you can select where you want this variable to be used, right? That also if you want you can enable basically. Now next, let me go back. Now deployment we have. That's where. Now, if you want to add different stages, that you can basically enable it. Basically, you can add that also. And there is a option that is, as I told you, you can see, right? So first thing, pre-deployment conditions. This also option we have triggers. Triggers when, that means when the release has to run, right? Maybe one after stage, right? You can enable or manual. You can choose based on the triggers. Now, they can select which stage it has to run, right? There also we can enable it from where it has to take the code, basically. Latest, basically. Let's say in staging. Like that, we can enable it or manual. Manual when if you want to enable manually, you can choose. But as I told you, let's not do manual. Maybe after stage or you can choose after release. After release, in the sense, you can see how it will be. Once it is released, it will going to get a new one. Okay. So after step once the first stage is completed, then it will move to second stage. Otherwise, if you go with the after the release, once it is released here, it will deploy here as well as here. That means parallel it will be running it, right? It will be deploy staging as well as the dev environment. Together it will be running parallelly together. If you don't want, you can choose after stage. Or you can choose the manually. Okay, now anyway. Second thing is the artifact. Option we have it. In artifacts also we can filter if you at all need. There is an option if you click here. So this, let's say type or means whether you want to explore or include, you can mention. And you can mention the build branch. Which branch you want to take it from which branch it has to be triggered, right? So I can select the branch name, and if you have a tag name in your branch, then you can mention, otherwise you can ignore it. So this is a branch. That means wherever this particular repo has this branch called features/this git branch, and with it will include, right? Then it will get triggered basically. Okay. Then next, if you want to enable, again it is option. Second thing, we have an option called as schedule. Now, what is schedule? As name suggests, right? If you want to schedule certain pipelines to run in certain day, let's say I have an option to schedule from Monday to Saturday, Sunday, right? That means, as we all know, we being as an IT, we don't work on Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, if you want to run even on weekends, you can do so. The options are there. You depends on your case. You can use it whichever you want. Let's say I want to schedule every Saturday or Sunday. Also, if you don't need for every day, so it depends on you can take and take whichever day you want to schedule, and what is the time you can give a time. Let's say just for sake of time, you can give a time. Your whatever. If it's a we are Indian, right? So Calcutta we have to sex maybe. Yeah, we have to choose this one. If you want, if you work in the Indian time, then you choose this one. Second time, what time you want, when you want, what's the day you need. So based on that, you can schedule. There are options are with it. What is mean by this one? Now this will be running only this particular time basically. It will not run every day. It will run only this particular time to schedule. Then pull request deployment. That means even for the deployment also based on the pull request, we can enable it if you want. That means if you enable here, you can see the release. The release definition is currently not configured to trigger pull request. Okay. So if you want, you can define this also. So in your pipeline, you need to enable this also first. Then there is an option, as we all know, we have done this also, approval also. Same as I told you. Here, you can see, right? We have done, we can do this also. Now we have an option called gate. This is very important, right? This is what we were saying. There is an option called a gates. Defines gates to evaluate before the deployment. As I told you, before deployment of your any resource, it has to evaluate according to the company policy, right? So if I click here, there you can see a lot many options. Let us show you. Let me show you. Now, first thing, if you go, as I told you, it is checkpoint, right? Delay before evaluations 5 minutes. Like the delay before the evaluation will take 5 minutes right time. Now gates. Now if you click here, they'll be having four to five different types of gates we have. First, if you can notice here, right? Gates we have, as I told you, it is checkpoint. Now check Azure policy compliance. Now security and the compliance assessment for Azure policy. So what it does basically, if you have a policy in Azure, it is defined as I just given example, right? Let's say network. The particular BM should be using only particular network, BNet, that means, or not maybe particular BM should be using only particular SQ. If you have this kind of Azure policy defined as part of your Azure, Azure Light, Azure, right? So you can enable this one. So if you, as soon as you click here, you can check now. Now there is an option. Let's say I will deal with the Azure compliance policy. Now you can see the version. This is actually you don't need to do anything. Here name can be changed according to your requirement. But here is the thing. Now as you want to do here, there is an option you have to check. As I told you, this is in Azure portal. That means you should know where your subscription is resides. Now let me select this one. I have it here. I should be having the resource group. Okay, I in my case maybe I'm just taking random one. Okay, I don't care now for now, but yeah. Now this is group name. No, I don't have anything, right? If you have multiple, you can check. Okay, Pulse, we have resource group, resource group. Okay, so now once you have this thing, now come down. How many times it will retry duration? Like what is the duration for the retry? That also you can set it. 2 minutes, right? Same way, there is an option reference. If you want to have anything, you need it. So basically, let me check you. Okay. So we have already shown last time, if you remember that Azure policy related, right? So same way I was trying to make you understand. If you come to the, where is that policy? You can type Azure policy, will come, okay, or just policy you can type. So if you come here below, there is a it's loading. Let it, okay. Now you can see. First thing, if you go dashboard of your Azure policy, you can see 100% compliance, right? Compliance. Compliant means no issue. If it is a non-compliant, then there is a issue. Now, in my case, it is a compliant. So this is why it is showing green tick. If it is a non-compliant, it will be in yellow, right? So if you click that, in total, I have 6 resources. Out of 6, all 6 are 100%, it is a compliance. That means I don't have any complaint. If it is a non-compliance, you get a message with a yellow color. Not yellow actually, yeah, yellow color actually. Embedded symbol will get it, okay? And you can see, say for example, let me expand this one. What is this resource about? You can see I have a policy called append tag its value to resource group. That means whenever I create any resource, there should be one resource group already. Sorry, one tag should be always created for you. Okay, if you want that also, you can enable it. Now, if you go here, let me show you. Now, if you go back, sorry, not go back. Let me refresh it. Now, in particular, this thing, I have this many. This is the policy name, right? In this particular policy name, this many resources are being used. Let's say I have a resource group. I have a different name. All these things, they'll be having one common tag. What is the tag? Let me show you. If you come to the, let me click one of them. Let's say I will click here, view assignments, right? If you view assignment, now if you see here, parameter ID, tag name, tag value, right? There is environment and this is a productions. Environment as a production. This is a value I want, right? That means I'm trying to say that whenever there is any resource creator in your Azure portal, then this common environment name should be always available. That means this particular tag should be always available. If you want, you can check it. Let's say I will just show you. Uh, how can I duplicate? Okay. Now let me just take you and just go to resource group. Or not just resource group, anything, any basically. Resource, yeah, maybe if you mention the policy as a resource group level, then it will be resource group. Now you can choose any one. Let's say I will take this one. Go to text. You can see this is a default. I didn't know this is a by default will get created. Same thing if I select any one, every resource group would have a this tag common tag. So like this, if you want to have a different policy again, you can do that also. Not just the tag, as I can just for example check, but it can be any other resource. Like we have the Azure backup should be enabled for VM. If you want to create this thing also, you can see. Now that means Azure backup should be enabled for virtual machine. Now if you try to create virtual machines without the backup enabled, then you get a non-compliance. Okay, so you can check it like this. So like this, there is a already predefined resource are, I mean, predefined things are there. Now let's say whenever I want to check about this particular policy, I can check how many complaints, whether it is compliant, non-compliance, you can see what is the state, and also resource by complaint state, you can check like how many are complaints, how many are non-complaints, because there's nothing BM created, right? So it is showing as a non-complaints 0, and complaints also 0, right? And you can see this also. What is the effect type? Or basically audit if not exist. They will first check. That means whenever they will create and whenever you create any resources, if it is not defined any tag with this particular name, whatever name you given the BM, this thing, like this thing, they will check the BM, and this is not, if that is not defined, then they will try to basically analyze it, and based on that they'll give feedback like non-compliance, it will say, and you have to check the issue and check the errors and then fix that manually in the sense according to the issue, whether backup to be enabled or something else. You just need to check one by one accordingly. Okay, that is what I was saying it. Now as I told you, coming to here, same thing, you can also do a different policy, we can define and do it like that, so that when this particular requirement is meeting, then only your resource will be basically approved, or maybe you get a message also whether you're having issue or not. You can check accordingly whether if you want to approve or not. Okay, now we have understood. Let's go with the next one now. Next is, let me check this thing. Now if I check, let me remove this one. I don't need. Now if I go deployment gears, different one, there is a invoke Azure functions. That means if you want to invoke with some Azure functions we have, right, to do some automations to trigger something. So if you have a functions created, so to do some action that if these are meeting according to the again specified requirement, then it's good. Otherwise, even that also possible, you can define this also. Then invoke REST API also. Then we also have something called as the query Azure monitor. So for example, you have created one VM here as part of this deployment. Now the VM, let's say this is for the production base. Let's say, okay, for our case, let's say a staging environment. Okay. Now what happened in staging environment as you basically deployed, right? First, we need to check the health of the resource also. That means virtual machines, whether it is working fine or not. Like if there's any issue, definitely you need to fix the issue as well. So let's say CPU utilization, memory utilizations, or maybe any other traffic, or maybe it could be any other, right? So if you want to monitor like this, so you can like this one also, and then you can select what is subscription resource group, everything same like that. So once you enable this thing, now as soon as it is created in particular dev environment, sorry, staging environment, before moving to the higher environment, they will keep there is an option, right? They will check the every certain time. They will check, if you see here, every 5 minutes delay before evaluations. They will delay before evaluations. That's okay, but they'll keep checking the things. This, as I told you, that is you can change it. It depends on the delay evaluation if you want to define. But yeah, so once you define everything according to the your subscription details and Azure policy, then what you can do is you can basically get the alerts also. Let's say based on this thing, you can define some alerts also, right, in Azure, so that it will get trigger the alerts and send it to some certain user. Let's say for you can send to some automation to do something, right? Or you can use Azure functions again if you want to. So there is different way of doing it, right? So that also you can use it. Okay. So if you want that also enable, you can do it. This is one way. Second, let's say I will not disable, I'll remove it. Then we have it work item. Now work item, query work item. What is a query work item? Query work item basically execute a work item query and checks the number of items returned. So now if I select the work item here, now you select the work item on whatever query. So basically what you need is that you need to define some query to basically, if you see here, you can select a save work item query to execute it. So if you come to here, how can I go? Yeah, here Azure repo boards we have. Now we have a query option. Now there is a query, right? Input work item query, you can need query. Now you can write some query if you want to write. Like this. Now maybe it depends on the requirement. You can change it how you want things. Now you can remove it by using the here button, cross button. So change date according to you. Anything greater than this particular date, 180 days. Then work item type, anything. Maybe you can change greater. Maybe you can change to anything related issue, or maybe anything you can check it, select a task or anything, story level or whatever. So depends on your this thing. You can select issue, main issue. Otherwise, maybe Yeah, you can select anything as I told you. Bugs, I think. Okay, let me check the features and state. State means what is the state of the task. That means whether it is close or it is active or it is anything, right? So state means, as you can see, you can select or accepted by. There's many options where you can do it. So then let's say I don't want to do state as, let's say, close. I want to do it. Close means total how many close? 180 days I can remove it. Maybe I can go. Um, yeah, it's okay. Let it be as default. So I'm selecting as task maybe. Stop this thing, right? Task. So I'm saying that in a sense date that is within this particular 180 days. If the and the work item type, if it's a task, because in work item we have a different task work item type, right? Maybe task, features, epics, and then we have a user story features. We have many, right? So in this one of them, I set the task level. So in task level, work item as a task within 80 days, and but state should it is closed, then only you should be coming. That means other maybe active I will give, otherwise yes active. Okay, I'll give a close because many tasks be closed. Just to query and show you, that's it. Okay, now you can run it. Now you can see those two tasks. You can check now, right? Now you can see task create storage account in East2S. That is what we were doing last time. We have closed that automatically using the pull request that way also. Now we also have Azure monitor. This is also issue. This is closed. That means only this is coming in last 80 days. I have given like two tasks on the task level, and that is closed. Now, if I want to say as a active or active, I can check. That means only the active task. That means still it is not yet started, right? If you query now it's not there because why it is not there? Maybe that we don't have a task active right now. Anything, it should be all closed. This is the reason why I'm saying it. We have to basic code. Let's say in my case, I have active. Let's say in this case, it is not showing any result because we don't have any active tasks. But maybe in the active, we can choose instead of the task. Maybe let's say I will select as the epic level or feature level. Let's see if I can find something. Feature level, nothing there. Okay, then epic level. Yeah, nothing is there. But of course, as I told you, if you have the epic created already, let me create a one and show you so that you get some clarity on that. Let me open one more tab. I will go to the boards. Okay, I will create one features. Maybe, yeah, that's okay. Right, so go to boards. Now in the boards, what we'll do, it's loading. Yeah. Now, backlog work item, I can go directly. We can create from here only. Now, let's say I will create new task. Work item, there's a different type, right? Let's say I will select as a user story in my test, just for the sim. That means I want to see the status. That's right. I created user story. Now let me, let me create the user story as a AKS deployment. Right? This is the user story level. Now this is a new. Now, as I told you, whenever you create anything by default, it will be as a new. But it is, let me assign to my name. Or you can, I don't need to assign it, but I'm just giving the sake of this thing, okay, interest. So yeah, this is by default new state. That means whenever you create, it is actually this thing. Now, let me save it. Okay. Now it is created. Now let me come here once again. Now, if you select here, there is an option called tasks. Here, I will select as a user story because user story I created, right? Now you can see the AKS deployment. Right now it is a new. Now, if I click here, again in the same user story, now I can see the option. As soon as you create, whenever you create in the user story level, it is a new. As soon as you change to, let's say, active, that means you have started working on this. Once you started working, you can see implementation started. That means as you start working, then it will be you have to move to the active status. Sorry, state. Now it is an active. Let me show it. That will now let me come here and query. So in my case, we created a user story, right? Now you can take the user story and it should be active. That means in last 80 days or maybe today, whatever date you say, work item type, if it is a user story and the state should be active, then I should get a message. I mean, how many are there? So I cannot go through entire page, right, to check the query of the work item, everything. So what basically we need to do it, this is how we need to query it. So now you can see many others also, this part of the different one, active one, but the one we are interested in a case, right? So that means even others also we have an active one, but we are interested in this one. That means even we can see the changes that we are making just now, right? Hriyen, it is active. That's how we can check it. Okay. So this also, if you want to query based on this also, here you can define. So there is an option. How can I do that one? I will show you that. Now, if I want to, let me, okay, here. Okay, let me come back. Sorry, my board is here, right? So what this is a query I want. I want to have this query. There is an option called as a save, right? You have to save it. As you save here, you can give any name. Maybe work queries, whatever you can mention anything. Query cell type. Okay. Here this is a folder. This folder name you can see. See, there are two things. You just notice here. There is a call as a my queries. Second is a share queries. My queries is nothing where it is a private, and share query, as name suggests, it is used for the sharing it with others, so that even other also can query and check the status of it, right? So I will select this one. Now share queries, as I told you, that other person can also, as long as they have a DevOps access, they can also run the query, and you can also give permission to certain users if at all needed. Okay. Now that's how we have to do. Now we have shared it, right? Now we can check it here. If you see the results, now you can see I created, this is new I created, right? Now this is the new one I created. Now if you click here, I don't have to go run the query. I mean, check, 1 second this thing. I just need to select the share query. Automatically, you can this see I can simply run from here. I don't need to type change anything because I have already defined the query, whatever I need it, right? So now I can see here. That is how we. So same way now, if you at all need that to be defined as part of your this thing, share query, if you define here, let's say. Now it is not there, of course, because I need to load the page and give some permission. If it's not given, that you can define it like that. Okay. So then select this thing, then you can change it accordingly. Then next we have is, sorry for that. Then we have it, Sonar Cloud, right? Even you can also use a Sonar Cloud as part of your gate, right? Here, Sonar Cloud quality gate status, status, you can check it. Sonar Cloud quality gate status check for a bill. What it means basically, if you want to enable this also, we can do. So here, what it does basically, if your Sonar Cloud having some issue, because what is the purpose of using the Sonar Cloud? If you check, let me take you to the Sonar Cloud. Just 5 minutes, we'll try to close it. Okay. Sorry. Sonar Cloud is nothing but it is a cloud-based service, right? That is used for code scanning, vulnerabilities, and everything. Now, if you click here, maybe just click over there. Now, you can basically log in with different ID. Let me see the definition. Okay, integrate code quality and the code security. So this is for the code quality and security. Now, how can I log in? If I log in, there is a different way. You can log in with this is basically a cloud-based service. Use as this thing. Now you have an option to log in with your GitHub account, Bitbucket, GitLab, or Azure DevOps. Depends on what how you want to access, or if you are using the company this thing using SSO, that is also possible. Now we all know that we are working with Azure DevOps. Most probably we can choose one of them, right? Maybe this is good for us in our case, right? Because we are using Azure DevOps. So I can select this one. As you click on the Azure DevOps, so what happens basically, it will try to log in. If you have the already ID in place, they will definitely check, validate everything. Now let's wait. Loading the page. Okay, good. Now I can see here because I have already account created with this name I created as part of the DevOps. So if you want to create how it should work, as I told you, we have a class for this one for security related things. I will explain you, but for sake of our time, maybe interest, we what we'll do, you just try to understand. We have a this one application called this one. Now, if you click one of them, or say for example, you can notice here, right? We have a security. This many security issue we have it, and reliability related this many, maintainability and hotspot review, everything, duplications. That means you can imagine now what else we can do it with the help of Sonar Cloud, right? And now so we can enable it. So the way how we can do is, as I told you, we have a class, I will explain, but then I'm just giving you the some idea. If you see here my X issues, let me just click there. Now, as I told you, this is some date, everything is there. Now it's not showing. So you can select here severity, software quality, related, everything you can check it, right? But before that, you first need to have the account in place and then organizations. Just like in Azure DevOps, we have organization. You see here, this is, let's say this is organizations I created. Under organizations, then we have your projects. Just like in Azure DevOps, we have organizations, then we have a projects, right? The similar way, even when it comes to the Sonar Cloud or Sonar, this is for the Sonar Cube Cloud, but it's a Sonar Cloud. Okay, it works. Sonar Cube also we have. These also concepts are same, but then it is used for basically in the enterprise version, and basically you need to manage that as a service. For the when it comes to the Sonar Cloud, sorry, Sonar Cube. But when it comes to Sonar Cloud, you as a service you don't need to manage that one. You just need to buy a subscription and use it. This is a subscription based license. Okay, now let's say you have some issue and all that. You can check there is an option. If you see quality gates, depends on the issue, you can check here. This can be published within your pipeline. I will explain you, I will show you also how we can publish this all the related issue in the pipeline also. I will show you that also, don't worry. Maybe let me show you one of them. Okay, maybe I can let me check if I can show you something old code. Maybe should not cloud pipelines. If you go my old pipeline, maybe I might have used it. I don't remember, but yeah, I can. Let me try to show you if I can find something. Sonar Cloud, Sonar Cloud. Maybe this. Yeah, Sonar Cloud, right? Sonar Cube updated a cloud. This is so. So here we don't have it. We'll come to the done. Okay, maybe I have not published it. I don't remember where I have published it, but yes, I have published it, but I don't remember. Anyway, I will show you that also once when we get time. Maybe next week, as I told you, we'll start this also. Yeah. So basically, think for example, same here. Basically, we can also define, or maybe we can see the errors also. Let's say what is the issue in the Sonar Cube, sorry, Sonar Cloud. What is the status? You can check everything. Let's say you have an option here, right? Just now I was showing here, gates, right? With this quality gates result, let's say about the bugs issue or vulnerabilities issue or any kind of issue, code quality issue or code smell, or maybe everything, we can basically publish these artifacts also into your Azure pipeline so that you can check this thing. Based on that, you can basically consider to move for the next stage or not. Let's say this particular core is to for the staging environment. Let's say now if I want to move to the next environment, whether to move or not, that depends on the code quality. Quality gates, you can take a decisions according to the company standard whether to proceed further or maybe you need to fix the code first. Okay, so that can be published. The result, as I told you, can be published within your pipeline itself. I will show you next week, tomorrow, I mean next week. Okay, that's the thing. Next is about the we have understood. That is what it is also same result. Once it is done, where is that? Yeah. So once it's done, this particular quality gates, as I told you, right? Quality gates. This also can be passed as part of the pipeline. That means the particular environment, if the code quality is okay, looks good, everything, then only this can move forward. Otherwise, you don't need to, or maybe you will get an issue like a pipeline will fail that you because due to this particular Sonar Cloud result is not passed according to the expectation. Due to that it is but because of that it is going to fail like that. You get a message actually in your trigger while triggering. So these all possibility options are there. Okay, yeah, so I think, yeah, apart from this one I don't see much option to explain here. These are things. Okay, Tim. So yeah, anyway, don't worry, we will cover once again properly. We didn't explain anything about Sonar Cloud or Sonar Cube. Next week we have a session for that with the real time. I mean, with the hands-on. Basically, I will show you how to define, how to create the account, how to create the organizations, then link them, how to register. Because while saying this is, there are so many processes involved here. This is the reason, right? You need to create the organizations, then projects, then project need to be configured as part of your pipelines, and you need to create the service connections. Also, you need to configure the plugins also for the Sonar Cloud. So there are things are there to configure. A lot of process are there. I will cover next week everything that also so that you get a proper understanding end to end. Okay. So for now, I think we are good here. Maybe we can wind up here for today. So thank you, team, once again for joining us. And yeah, so we will see you again next week with this topic. Okay. Have a nice weekend. Thank you.